Okay, excited to introduce Bubba Ventrone as our special teams coordinator. Bubba and I have known each other for a long time, going back to his days patrolling the secondary for the Villanova Wildcats. Great football player, great person, has done an amazing job as a coordinator in this league for a bunch of years. Really an impressive track record, and it goes back to his career. He was a special teamer, and he knows the work that goes into that, how important it is to winning and losing. So we're thrilled to add Bubba to the staff. I'm going to turn it over to him so you guys can hear from Bubba himself. All right.
Thank you, Coach. Coach Ventrone, thanks for joining us today.
What's going on, guys? It's good to be back.
Great to have you here in our press conference room. We're going to start things off with a question from Tom Withers.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, Bubba. Welcome back, man. It's going to be strange calling you coach, I got to say.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, did you always want to be a coach?
Yeah, I knew that whenever I was done playing football, I'd be involved in some capacity. So I felt, it was a great opportunity to go to be the assistant in New England right away. Had an opportunity there, interviewed, and was given the job. So I started pretty soon after I retired, in 14 or in 15.
And because you played the position that you coach now, or the group that you coach, does that make you more demanding of the guys, or maybe a little more understanding of what they're going through?
I think I have a good feel on the techniques that are played, within the scheme and what's realistic and what's not. And I think the players respect that. So.
Thank you, Tom. Next question is from Mary Kay Cabot.
Hey, Bubba, welcome back. Just wondering, when you've looked over so far the Browns special teams, what do you think of Cade York? What do you think of his upside as you look to the 2023 season? And what else kind of gets you excited about what you have and what Browns fans are going to see on your special teams this coming season?
Sure. I'll start with Cade's first. It's not too often that you get to actually coach a guy that you rank coming out of college at the highest at that position. So last year, grading, all the specialists, the kickers, the punters, I had Cade at the highest. I'm fortunate to be able to coach him this year. So I think that, he obviously can improve, and we're going to just coach him up, and we're going to be, as good as we can in the kicking phase. I would say as far as the core group, it's a talented group overall. I see a lot of upside here, both as, with the ball handlers we have currently on the roster. And, I would say the guys that are, contributing in the big four phases, coverage units, and in the blocking phases. So I'm excited to work with this group.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay. Gail Ryder, you're up.
Hey, Bubba, welcome back to Cleveland. How has your experience as a player, being a core special teamer, made you a better coach?
Like I said earlier, I feel like I have a good understanding of the techniques that are played within the scheme. I've actually done it, in my career. That's all I did, really. So I feel like I have maybe a little bit more insight to, I would say, maybe the true, intricacies of the techniques. I'm a big, and we will drill it to death, is the fundamentals of the game. Footwork, hat placement, playing with the base. I'm going to emphasize that ad nauseum to our players, and ultimately that's going to get us the best results. You can't do anything unless you have good fundamentals and technique, and that starts, from day one.
And the rules these days seem to tilt the game against punt and kick returns, but your units have been really successful in that area. Can you maybe explain why that is? Does it just simply come down to technique and teaching technique?
Yeah, this past year we had a young group in Indianapolis. We drilled the crap out of their footwork on kickoff return and our drops. We ended up leading the league in kickoff return because we executed our techniques well, and we ran basic returns the entire season. I feel like the same, parallels show up whenever you're talking through the punt unit. Good footwork. You can handle any type of rush in protection as long as you have those fundamentals and technique to be able to allow you to, see those different types of exotic looks.
Thanks, Daryl. Scott Petrick, you're up.
Hey, Bubba, what would you say are your most vivid and or favorite memories of the time you spent in Cleveland?
What's up, Scott?
How's it going?
Most vivid memory, just talked about this with Chad O'Shea as I was walking down the stairs, is beating New England in 2000 and it had to be 2010. Yeah, we beat them up pretty good. I know obviously a really hard team to play against every season. So it was a big win in that game. I remember I recovered a fumble off a muff kick in that game.
Yeah, well, as long as we're talking about the Patriots, I'm sure it's a ton, but like, what are a couple things from being around Coach Belichick so long that you apply in your role?
So, I credit Bill a huge amount to everything that I've had, the success that I've had. He actually texted me this morning to congratulate me on the job. Bill really has given me my foundation for learning the kicking game. He and Brad Sealy both have a huge influence in the things that I do and, how I coach the game, how I call the game, how I see the game. And, they've just given me a lot of insight and direction and opportunity. Bill gave me opportunities as a player and as a coach, as did Brad. So, I'm going to use everything that I've learned from them and hopefully make this group, one that we can be proud of.
Thanks, Scott. Ashley Bastock has our next question.
Hey, Bubba, nice to meet you. I had another Cade York question. I know Cade is kind of a self-described perfectionist. He talked about maybe getting too hung up on his technique later in the season with some of his misses last year. So I'm wondering just what it's like to work with a player that has that personality type that wants to be perfect at that specific position.
Yeah, the kicking position, I feel like the best guys, the guys that are the most successful, the best kickers, I've been around quite a bit. Phil Dawson, Vinatieri, Gostkowski, the guys that I've coached in Indianapolis. Chase this past year had a good year. Badgley, those guys have done a good job of putting misses to bed. Moving on, not being so caught up in missing a kick. It's how fast you can make the correction and then move on to the next kick. So, I haven't had a chance to sit down and actually meet with Cade, but that'll be one of the things that I'm going to influence for him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Dan Lobby, let's go to you.
Hey, Bubba. You obviously played it. You've coached it. What makes a great special teams player?
I'd say the traits that you look for in special teams players, you want to have aggressive, tough, smart, disciplined players, that understand how the game is being officiated and how the game needs to be played. The kicking game is completely different than any other facet of the game, offense and defense. It's extremely different than the college kicking game, which is completely different overall. So when these young players come into the NFL, they really have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So there's a lot of teaching that goes along, and that's why those meetings in the spring and then into training camp, into the season are so important, especially for those young players, because they're getting taught all these new techniques that they've never seen before or never even have experienced at all in their careers. And while they're trying to still, learn the offensive playbook, the defensive playbook, and now they're learning a completely different facet of the game in the kicking game. So, those are the things I look at.
And then I know you're obviously, early and young in your coaching career, but do you have aspirations to be a head coach someday? And do you think coaching special teams can kind of help you down that path?
I have aspirations to be a head coach at some point, but honestly, my sole focus right now is getting this core unit and these specialists going. I'm excited for this opportunity. I cannot wait. I'm so excited to be back in Cleveland and have this opportunity. I can't express it enough.
Thank you, Dan. Tony Grossi, go ahead.
Hey, Bubba, congratulations. Good to see you again.
Tony, I think I texted you a little while back when you came out with that it was 1 to 99 and you rated everybody on that. You like the best player to wear the jersey number in the Browns. And I was 41, so thank you. I'm sure there haven't been a lot of great number 41s in the organization, obviously, if you had me chosen there. So thanks for that little nugget.
Thanks for reading. I have two quick questions. Number one, you mentioned the New England game. The game before that was in New Orleans, and you guys did some funky things on special teams to win that game against the Saints. What's your philosophy now as a special teams coach in using fun/gimmick plays? I haven't seen one, I don't think, since then in Cleveland.
look, those types of plays come about whenever, the scheme, the personnel, the opportunity arises. So depending on what the other team's doing, those opportunities come about. So, if you're playing a team that's disciplined and is more sound and that looks that they're giving you, you're probably not going to have those opportunities if they arise. Obviously, we're always looking to, impact the game in some way, shape, or form. So if anything like that were to come about, obviously we'd be, willing to do something along those lines. But, you're not looking. I feel like when you're like searching to get those, they're probably not going to come about. They have to really present themselves based on personnel, scheme, unsound football to a degree.
And the second question is, the Browns and every team is embarking on the transaction season, acquiring new players. Will you have a say-so in perhaps just getting a pure special team core player in free agency, or do you just take what they give you and make something of it?
I feel like that's one of the strongest things I bring, as a football coach, as a former player, is my ability to evaluate talent. I feel like I've done a good job, in my history, both in New England and in Indianapolis, of not just at the highest level of like within the draft, but undrafted players, been able to, identify those types of players and develop them into, all pros in Indianapolis, in Ashton Dolan and George Odom. So I'm excited about bringing what I feel like is a good eye for the football game here. I've already had conversations with Andrew and his staff. So I'm excited about that process as well.
Thank you, Tony. Back to Mary Kay Cabot.
Okay, Bubba, I have two questions for you here real quick. The first one is, what makes you so excited to be back here? What's so special about it? Why do you love it here so much?
It's a blue collar town to me. It's a blue collar town that loves football, that's passionate about football. I was here from 09 to 12. We didn't have a lot of successful seasons. We were very good on special teams back then, may I note. But even back then, we didn't win a lot of football games, but you could just tell that this town they just love football. And for me to be back around that, I'm from Pittsburgh. Can't wait to play them twice a year. I love playing against them as a player. I can't wait to coach against that team. But I'm just so excited to be back in a football town that wants to win.
Okay, and then the second question I have is, obviously you were around and played with Josh Cribbs and Phil Dawson. So, how much do you understand the power and the impact of an electrifying return or a big kick or, a game-winning kick or whatever? And will you have either of those guys, sort of address your units, this summer, or maybe kind of give some kind of presentation or be involved with the team in any way?
Yeah, I think both of those guys would be great resources to bring into our room and talk at some point. I actually touched base with Phil Dawson it was last year. We played at San Francisco because he had kicked out there and put our kicker back then. It was Badgley, in touch with him just to give him some insight on how the stadium was with the wind and things like that. So I think that would be a good resource for Cade, honestly, is, to reach out to Phil at some point, which he probably has already. But yeah, being able to impact the game is what we want to do. But first, we're gonna emphasize fundamentals and technique, and then those big plays will come. We're not going to reach for them.
Thanks, Mary Kay. Let's take two more. We'll go to Ashley Bastock and close with Tom Withers. Ashley.
Speaking of the return game, I know Jerome Ford kind of stepped up into that role last year. I guess from your introduction to the team, like what you've seen out of him on that tape and what you think he can do for you guys.
Yeah, after watching the film from last year, I think there's a lot of good things out of Jerome. He's got good speed. He's got good vision. He runs aggressive and downhill. He had definitely a few, productive returns as they did in the latter part of the season. I'm excited about Donovan Peoples-Jones as a ball handler. Jakeem Grant, we're hoping that he's back and healthy. Darden, who they acquired later in the season last year from Tampa, is another good ball handler, returner. So I'm excited about the group I have to work with.
Thanks, Ashley. Final question, Tom Withers.
Hey, Bubba, as a matter of housekeeping, I'll call you Bubba or Coach. How do you want it in print? Is Bubba okay, or Ray? What would you prefer?
I'm not into the Ray mode anymore.
Okay.
You can call me Bubba. Nobody really calls me Ray.
I got you.
You know, everyone calls me Bubba. My mom calls me Raymond.
I just wanted to
So-
do it properly in print for you. So, hey, and you kind of answered this before. This team really had a hard time making an impact in a positive way through special teams over the last couple of years. You kind of mentioned it though, but does it have to happen organically, Ray, or can you come in and really make an imprint and kind of make things happen right away?
Well, my message to the team is going to be, look, if we're going to be a good unit top to bottom, we need contributions from everybody. Whether you're on the field goal block unit, the field goal unit, you're a starter that plays in 1 to 2 phases, everybody's got to be willing to do their part. And if everybody's willing to do their part, no one's going to balk at being on the field for a kicking play, then I think you have an opportunity. You need the buy-in. And that's what I'm hoping that I can get out of everybody. I feel like I'm pretty demanding on what I want. I'm going to coach everybody the same. I'll coach hard, and I'm going to coach the crap out of techniques and fundamentals. And ultimately, that's going to give us the results we want on the field.